Hello, welcome to Gay Cruise and Travel Podcast with me, Just Joey T, brought to you by JustJoeyTravels. Just in case you didn't tune into last week's episode of this podcast, I just very recently launched my travel advisory business. Yes, I am a professional travel advisor now, and that is JustJoeyTravels. There are links down below in the description. You want to check me out at JustJoeyTravels.com, or if you're watching this on your big screen on YouTube, on your TV, there are some QR codes linked on the left side of your screen as well. But all right, today, as I like to do every so often, I want to just go through some of the upcoming cruises on the Atlantis cruise calendar. So I like to do this once a quarter, maybe every 3 months or so, just to give everybody an update on some of the cruises. One of the things I like to talk about, because I keep getting comments from people saying, I was bummed that I missed out on booking this particular cruise in the past. I wish I had more updates on when cruises are becoming available. That's the one thing that a lot of you guys comment and ask me about. The other thing I get quite a lot of comments about on is, I wish I was able to book this cruise before it's sold out. I wish I knew before, like ahead of time, to book it before it sells out. Obviously, none of us have a crystal ball. We can't really see into the future. However, I like to be able to give you all a little bit of a heads up if a cruise is approaching capacity, because I am kind of able to tell in a certain way when cruises are kind of like getting filled up. And that's why I always like to let you guys know if I think, hey, I think this cruise could be selling out soon. If you actually want to go on this cruise, don't just sit on your ass, get off your ass and book that cruise. So today we're going to go through some of the cruises. Well, I'm going to go through all the cruises actually coming up on the Atlantis cruise calendar, all the ones that are available to book, the ones that are not sold out. There is a Tahiti cruise over New Year's. That was sold out ages ago, many months ago. So we're not going to talk about that one because that ship has sailed pretty much for most of you. But we're going to talk about the Halloween cruise that's coming up just later this month. It's going to be in 2-ish weeks that some of you will be boarding on that Virgin ship in Miami for that Halloween cruise. After that, in November, we have the Hong Kong Singapore cruise, that was, or the Asia cruise. Those are the two remaining cruises that are not sold out this year. Then we move on to next year, 2026, and we have our first cruise in January on the Brilliant Lady. That's going to go down to the Caribbean from Miami. That one is a slightly newer edition. Then we have in February the big one, the big party cruise, the one that I've done an entire podcast on a few months ago. Back in, actually, maybe several months ago, back when it first launched, and that is on board the Symphony of the Seas with Royal Caribbean. That one isn't sold out yet. You can still get on that one. And then the last cruise we're going to talk about is the LA Mexico cruise, obviously departing from California down to Mexico, and that's in April of 2026. That one is a little bit of a newer cruise. I did a whole podcast on this one as well, but I'm actually really excited about that one. So just in case you're new to Atlantis, maybe you don't know about all the different Atlantis cruises that are coming up, this is going to be a great episode for you to listen to. Or maybe you're thinking about going on one of these cruises, you're not quite sure, you want to know if one of these might be a good fit for you. I am going to give those of you in that position some of my tips and advice, because I've talked about different cruises having different vibes and being maybe better suited for different types of cruisers. So I'm definitely going to put in my 2 cents on, of all these cruises coming up, which ones I think will be better suited for which types of cruisers. So let's get to it. But before we do that, again, all the information on all these cruises, you can find them on the official Atlantis website, but you can also now find them on my JustJoeyTravels.com travel advisory website. So on my website, instead of just listing out all the cruises, I've done a web page for each of these cruises, and within each of those, there's going to be a section called the Just Joey T forecast. Okay. And it's basically my description of what I think the vibe of the ship is, what type of cruiser I think is most suitable for that particular cruise. And also, if you're a brand new cruiser, there are some cruisers that I think are good for new cruisers and some that I think I wouldn't recommend. So for each of those cruises, there's a little question, basically. There's a little section that says, is this cruise good for new cruisers or not? So you can go to JustJoeyTravels.com, click onto the cruises section. All the Atlantis cruises will be listed in that section. Then you can scroll down a little bit and then you will see the Just Joey T forecast for each of the cruises we're going to talk about. All right, now let's get to it. First of all, we've got the Atlantis Halloween cruise. And if you follow my Just Joey Travel Instagram, yes, plug, this cruise and also the November Asia cruise, Atlantis just announced a couple of deals for these two cruises. So the Atlantis Halloween cruise, there is a particular rate that is now available for this cruise, and it's called the Insider Guaranteed rate. So if you go into the Atlantis website, the official Atlantis website, you click into the details for this cruise, go to the pricing section, and then you see there is a new rate starting from $999 US, and it's called the Insider Guaranteed room rate. Now, how this works is it's still a double occupancy rate. So the $999 assumes you and one other person will be booked into that room. The oddity about it is that you're not going to be able to pick the exact room number that you will be in. The upside is it's the cheapest way to get on this cruise right now. It's the lowest double occupancy rate that is published or is available for this cruise. Basically, how it works is you and presumably one other person will book into this room, and they're not going to assign you your actual room, your room number. You're not going to know what it is until maybe boarding day, possibly. So it's actually not a bad deal as long as you're not too picky about the type of room you're going to get. This will be, as the name suggests, an inside room. So a room that does not have any windows, no balcony, no view onto the outside. If you're not too picky about having a view, a window, or like a balcony, this is actually quite a good deal. It's going to be, by my quick back of napkin math, this is going to be about $300 cheaper per person compared to if you were to book this type of a room just using one of the regular rates. So this is actually a pretty good deal. Let's talk about the cruise itself. I'm going to run you through some basics. So the Atlantis Halloween Caribbean cruise is going to be 7 nights, 1 full week. It's going to depart and come back to Miami, Florida. It's going to hit up Key West, Puerto Plata, Grand Turks and Caicos, and Bimini in the Bahamas. And is on board the Virgin Voyages Brilliant Lady. And it's a great ship, actually, I think, for this particular cruise. Mid-sized ship, so not too small, not too big. Sometimes you get a super large cruise ship, and it can feel a little bit unmanageable, and bigger isn't always better for cruise ships, which we'll kind of talk about when we get to the big February cruise later on. But it's a mid-sized ship. It's kind of sort of the Goldilocks size, I think, in terms of ocean liners. And the Virgin ships are all really, really new, very modern, not much wear and tear. So I think it's a really great ship for this. You get basic Wi-Fi is included as well, and your non-alcoholic beverages are also included. So those are a couple of the unique perks about going on a Virgin Voyages ship for just versus Royal Caribbean or NCL or some of the other cruise lines out there. For this particular cruise, it's not selling the best, but to be fair to Atlantis, in previous years, they've sailed the Halloween cruise out of Southern California, out of the West Coast, and it would go down to Mexico. It's a very different itinerary. And back when it was on the West Coast, they had that West Coast Halloween cruise pretty much every year for at least the past 10 or so years, probably further than that before I even started cruising. And that was a very reliable cruise. However, they were never usually able to get more than about low to mid 2000s number of people to book that cruise. Some years when it was on the West Coast, they had gotten a slightly bigger ship, a ship that could take maybe about 3,500 or approaching 4,000 people. Atlantis doesn't have, a magic wand that they wave and they can have any kind of ship in any part of the world that they would like. It's kind of subject to when ships are available and when a cruise line is able to let them charter a particular ship, amongst other factors. But yeah, there have been some years past where they had a slightly bigger ship for the LA Mexico cruise in October for Halloween. And when they had those slightly bigger ships, it just never filled up completely anyways. The ship didn't feel empty. Actually, it was kind of nice. When a ship is maybe like 80% full, from a financial point of view, the fuller the ship, the more money everybody makes, right? But however, just from the perspective of a guest on the ship during the sailing, for a ship to be about like 3/4, 75 to 80% full is really nice because the dining hall, the restaurants are not as full. You don't wait as long for the elevators. The pool is not as crowded daytime when you want to go sunbathing. Just everything's a little less busy. When a ship is 95%, 100% completely full, sometimes it could feel a little crowded. The wait for the restaurants are a little bit longer. The gym's a little more crowded. You wait a little longer for the elevators, things like that. I think for this particular cruise, the fact that they're doing that insider guaranteed $9.99 per person deal is obviously an indicator that it's not selling. It's not gonna be a solo cruise. Let's put it that way. I think on balance, looking at everything now, the fact that it's the first time they're doing this cruise on the East Coast for the Halloween cruise, the fact that I think sales are probably not quite as brisk as they would had hoped possibly. It is a little bit of a different itinerary. I think it's going to be actually a pretty good cruise for someone who's a new cruiser. And by that, I mean, I think it's going to be a pretty good balance between relaxy time, as I like to call it. I picked that up from some like TV show, and I always like use that term, relaxy time. I don't know where I picked it up from. If you know, comment down below. But I think it's actually pretty good bet for a new cruiser in the sense that there will be the parties on board. Atlantis always throws their dance parties on board, but the parties are not going to be crazy. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to just have more like a chill, low-key type of a cruise, at least during the times when you want it to be. But having sailed the Virgin ship with Atlantis in the past, I know that even on a Atlantis Virgin sailing where it's only maybe something like 70, 80% full, you're still going to have a really fun time. It's just not going to be to the point where everyone's partying all the time. It's not going to be quite a party cruise. So I think if you want a experience that it's kind of like equal parts entertaining and dance party-ish versus it still can be a nice relaxing cruise and you can go enjoy and have, like a nice meal, have like a nice dinner. Maybe you're traveling with your significant other and you want to be able to have like date nights and things like that, but you still obviously want some of the Atlantis entertainment sprinkled in there if the mood strikes you, i.e. Atlantis always brings drag performers onto all of their sailings. The dance parties are always there. So if you want to escape the cold weather from whichever part of the country you're in, because we are leaving summer behind, fall weather is kicking in now for quite a bit of the country. It is starting to get a little bit chilly. If you want to just do something a little different for Halloween as well, if you want to visit Key West, that's one of the key ports of call. That is on the itinerary for this particular sailing. And you want to go on a gay cruise that's not too crazy. You want the option to go to a party and dance the night away, but that's maybe not your main objective. Okay, you want to just have a more like less crazy cruise. You don't want like a crazy party cruise. I think this is probably going to be the vibe for the October Halloween cruise. Those of you that have been on the Halloween cruise on the West Coast, when it was sailing there before, pretty much every previous year, to use that as a reference point, if that's your expectation of, oh, previously when I went on the Halloween cruise, when I was out of Southern California, this was what it was like. And this is kind of your point of reference, if you will. I am going to venture a guess that it's not going to be quite as fun in the sense that maybe fun is not the best word to use. It's going to be a little bit more mellow than that, I think. Something tells me there's not going to be quite as many people on this month's Halloween cruise out of Miami versus the previous Halloween cruises that were out of the West Coast. None that's going to be boring, but it's going to be take the party just a notch down compared to the previous ones, and turn up the relaxation up a notch in exchange. That's what I think is going to be the vibe for this particular one. And that's why I say it's actually pretty good for new cruisers, especially new cruisers that are not really like party people. A lot of people out there are not like me. I'm a circuit boy. I go to circuit parties. You know, I've been on cruises just to do the dance parties, for example. But a lot of people are not like me. But there's something for everyone here. But yeah, I think the pricing with that new rate, the $9.99, the Insider Guaranteed deal, I think it's a really good one. So yeah, we're only like a couple of weeks away. Obviously, a lot of people already have Halloween plans. But if you're eyeing this cruise, but you just weren't sure, hopefully some of that advice and information has swayed your decision. What I think the vibe's going to be on board, as well as that deal they have for the $9.99 interior room. All right, let's move on to Asia. In November, we have the Atlantis Hong Kong to Singapore cruise. It is 12 nights. So that's one of the key things to keep in mind. This is going to be a longer cruise. A lot of cruises, especially with Atlantis, are 7 nights. They're a week. It's nice and simple. This one is 12 nights, so it's nearly 2 weeks long. It departs from Hong Kong, and it ends in Singapore. So you don't go back to where you started from. That's also another thing to note as well. Several ports in Vietnam and Thailand that the ship will be stopping at. All the information is online for all those full details. This is going to be on the Celebrity Solstice ship. Another mid-sized ship. The maximum capacity is about 2,800 passengers. So it's actually a similar size in terms of capacity compared to the Virgin ships. And Virgin has all the same ships. But Celebrity, being more of a legacy cruise line, they have a wider variety and different sizes of cruise ships. And this one, it's about 2,800 passengers. Again, I think it's kind of like the Goldilocks sizes. Big enough of a ship that you have enough people to make it fun. But it's not so big of a ship that things seem like they're very far away, that there's going to be excessive walking, that it's going to be hard to find things because the ship is so big, that it's hard to run into people again because everyone is so spread out on a massive ship. So this one, I think, is actually pretty good. The itinerary is the star. There are some cruises you go on where the ports of call, the places you visit in the itinerary, meh. You know, there's some people, or there's some times where you just don't want to get off the ship. If I am going to go on the party cruise, and I'm going onto the party cruise in February, that is an example of a cruise where, you know, if you don't get off the ports, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't really matter. The ports are not really the attraction just to be really blunt, for that party cruise in February. This is the opposite. And it's a little bit like the Mediterranean cruises in Europe as well. If you're not going to get off the ship, there's no other great reason to go on this cruise except for if you live in Asia, or you, for some reason, will be in Asia during that time and you want to go on a cruise, which is kind of like that's more like an edge case. There are obviously a lot of people that live in Asia. Gay cruises in Asia is not really much of a thing. So I'm always excited when Atlantis does bring a cruise to Asia. And because queer cruises are not really a thing in Asia, you don't get a ton of people who live in Asia go on this cruise. And that's kind of an important thing to point out. And that's something that I've written up on the website, on the webpage for this particular cruise as well. A lot of you will be traveling and flying to Asia to take this cruise. So this cruise is going to be primarily, majority going to be people that are from overseas, not locally. They're not going to be people that live in like Southeast Asia or in East Asia. They're not going to be people that are from Hong Kong or from Singapore, whatever they're taking these cruises. There's always going to be some people that are in that situation. But I feel like the vast majority of people are going to be international travelers that are going to be flying to Asia to take this cruise. And that's not a small commitment to fly to a different continent on a long haul flight to go on a cruise for 12 nights. You have to want to get off at these ports. There's no point in doing all that work, flying long haul, going onto a cruise for 12 nights just to stay on the ship. So that's like the overriding reason you will go on this particular sailing. Beyond that, those are also some of the reasons why I don't think this is a good cruise for a new cruiser. 12 nights is a lot. If you find out that you don't like the cruise, you're probably going to find out a couple of days in. To be trapped, for lack of a better term, to be trapped on a cruise ship for 12 whole nights after you find out that you don't like being on a cruise the first or second day there, that's tough. That's really tough. And imagine you flew all the way halfway around the world to take this cruise. You've never taken a cruise before. You don't know what cruising is like. You get on the cruise and like a couple of days in, you hate the cruise experience for whatever reason. That's a lot of money and time to have spent to board this cruise. And now you're stuck on it for another 10 days. I don't recommend long cruises, no matter where they are usually, for new cruisers, and that's one of the reasons. And yeah, again, if you live in Asia, so therefore it's fairly easy for you to get to Hong Kong or Singapore, then maybe, but 12 nights is still a big commitment for a new cruiser, for someone who doesn't know what cruising is like. Because, most people that go on cruises, they do like the experience. But there are some people that go on a cruise and they just don't like it. Cruises are not for everyone. There's almost anything you can think of in the world that someone doesn't like. Okay? Some people don't like Taylor Swift. There you go. I'm not a Swiftie. Don't come for me. I'm just pointing out an example. Okay? So I wouldn't recommend this for new cruisers. Now, this is the other cruise Atlantis has done a deal for in their recent announcements. The deal was for $14.99 to get into a room. I assume it would be an interior room. I'm not seeing that on the system right now. I don't know if it was like a typo of some sort. I am seeing $15.99 for an interior room, again, assuming double occupancy. And, in terms of value, is $15.99 a good price for this cruise to get on? So the way you're going to get value out of this particular cruise is if you are going to get off the ship at most, if not all, of the ports. Think of the cruise not just an experience on board, but think about it also as transportation that brings you to all these different places. That would be quite difficult and cumbersome for you to travel to individually, like the old-fashioned flight, booking a flight, booking a hotel, or booking a train or something like that. But the cruise makes it very easy for you to go to all these different places, the place that is going to dock at on the itinerary. From that point of view, if you look at it in that more holistic way, I think for $15.99, it's a pretty good deal. Considering that it's 12 nights, it takes you to all these different places. It's an experience. It's definitely an experience to take this particular cruise. But if a cruise in Asia is on your bucket list, if visiting some of these places in Vietnam and going to Bangkok, for example, it's on your bucket list, you've never done it before, this is actually a really great way to do it. The $15.99 price point is still, I think, good value for it. All right, moving into 2026. You know, it's almost 2026. That is effing scary. It's scary to me because I've got so much to do before the end of the year. It's literally not funny. Anyways, let's talk about the January cruise that Atlantis has, and they call it the Tropical Americas cruise. This one is going to sail from Miami on January 15th. It's an 11 nights cruise, and it's going to hit up a whole bunch of places in the Caribbean. Costa Maya, Puerto Limon. I think I've tried to pronounce that one time, and someone corrected me and said that I didn't pronounce it right. So I'm sure I butchered it again. Aruba, Colon, Cartagena. I hope I did not butcher those names. Geography was never my strong suit, and pronouncing foreign names also not my strong. Just names are not my strong suit, to be really honest. Anyway, this is on another Virgin ship. This is the Virgin Brilliant Lady, a brand spanking new ship. Same Virgin experience as on all their other ships in the family. And I can't talk about this one without also tangentially talking and looping in the big, gigantic party cruise in February. Because most years, actually, Atlantis, they do run 2 Caribbean cruises early on in the year. One of them is the big party cruise, and then the other one lives in the shadow of the big party cruise. You see where I'm going with this? So basically, all the people that want to party, they want a party cruise, they want to go to parties, and they want that type of experience, they're all going to book onto the big party cruise. And then the other cruise that goes to the Caribbean, that's kind of like at roughly the same time of the year. Usually it's within like 2 to 4 weeks of the party cruise. It's all the people that don't want a party cruise. Do you want a party? Yes or no? Here are your 2 choices. Blue pill, red pill type of a situation. So that's kind of why I bring it up. Because all the people that want to party, even some people that don't, honestly, they just want that atmosphere. They want that higher energy atmosphere. They want that experience on that cruise ship. Because obviously, it's not just when you're at the parties that the vibe of the cruise is going to be a little different. So this particular cruise, the one in January on the Virgin Voyages ship, the Tropical Americas cruise, is going to be real low-key. Atlantis will still throw their dance parties because it's just what you get with Atlantis cruise. Even if it's not a party cruise, a party sailing per se, they're still gonna have like DJs. They'll still like spin music, and they'll still have those parties on board. But this is for the people who don't want a party cruise. You don't want to be on a gigantic ship with a bunch of party boys. And you want to take a cruise down to the Caribbean if these particular ports look appealing to you, or you want a winter getaway, like a nice, relaxing winter getaway, right? Again, not everybody wants to party, and some people just want to relax, or either sometimes you want to party and there are other times when you want to relax, okay? Totally chill. There's something for everyone. But this is basically what that cruise is going to be. It's not going to sell out. It's going to be quite relaxing. It is going to be a winter getaway. You know, if you are on the East Coast and you're like, I want to get out. I want a winter escape. I want to go down to the Caribbean for a little bit of warmth and sunshine in January, like in the middle of winter. This is a great way to do it. Pricing. Because it's not going to, well, in previous years, it's never sold out. Okay, I think for this particular one, you know, I don't see this selling out. It's selling decent. It's selling maybe a little bit better than I think it would when they announced it. Again, just given the positioning versus like the big party cruise. You know what I will say? If this particular cruise catches your eye and you do want to do it, maybe don't wait too long. I It's never sold out in the past. Let's put it that way. But it's selling. This is selling better than I expected to so far. So if you do want to go, I think don't dawdle for too long, just to be on the safe side. Even though I think it won't sell out in the end, it is selling better than I expected so far at this point. Just very quickly, is this going to be good for a new cruiser? If you have no inclination to party and you don't want to be near a bunch of party boys, I think this would be fine for a new cruiser. It's very low risk. I will say, though, there are other cruises on the calendar that I think might give you, how should we say, a more well-rounded Atlantis cruise experience. And that's why I used to recommend the October Halloween cruise for new cruisers back when it was on the West Coast, because it's like something for everyone. Like, the parties are well attended, but not crazy for the people that do have some party in them and do want some party on the cruise. Actually, a party boy can go on that cruise and actually be pretty happy. I have gotten that one multiple times. If you don't want to party at all, you don't want to even hear the word party, you can still go on that West Coast Halloween cruise in past years and still have like a great time. It was really like something for everyone. So that one's really good for that. This one, I think the parties are not going to be the party's going to be quite tame in comparison to most of the other Atlantis cruises. So if you know you're not a party person, you even hear the word party, but you do want to try out the Atlantis cruise experience, especially a more relaxing version of that, a really relaxing version of that, then I think this is a good option. Just know that it's going to be a quieter cruise. That's all. What's not a quieter cruise is the party cruise in February. So I've already mentioned it a couple of times just as a point of reference or in comparison to the other ones. Just in case you don't know about this one, it is on the Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas. Its capacity is 5,500 passengers. It is one of the biggest cruise ships in the world. And in most past years, it has sold out. There's some years where it doesn't sell out. And you know what? This year, I think it won't quite sell out. But that's not a bad thing. Honestly, if you have 4,800, let's say 4,700 to 4,800 guys booked, and the capacity of the ship is 5,500, that's only what, 80-something%? I didn't take school for math. I don't know what the percentage is. Trust me, even if this ship is only 80% full, it will not feel like a fifth of the ship is empty. Just because you still have nearly 5,000 guys. If you have 4,500 to 5,000 guys on the ship, that's still a massive amount of people. All the other cruises we talked about before, the maximum capacity, if you max out everyone and put 2 people into every room that can take 2 people, is 2,800. So when those cruises are at 90-95% sold, they probably have 25, 26-ish 100 people on it. So to have nearly double that, to have 4,800, 4,900, 5,000 guys when the capacity is 5,500, trust me, even the cruise doesn't sell, it's still going to be full. It's still going to be a shit ton of guys on board. Some years it sells out, some years it doesn't. I mean, to fill one of the biggest cruise ships in the world is quite difficult. Looking at it now, just looking at the system, I think this one might not sell out, but it's not far. It's not only 50% full. It's definitely not empty. I think it's probably going to be something like 90. I think we'll probably get to that type of fullness. I think last year was a similar-ish type of fullness. I don't exactly remember how full it was last year, but it was something it felt like the ship was something 80-something% full. But there were still people absolutely everywhere. It's just that, things weren't bursting at the seams. There were years before on this class of ship where it was sold out. And you can feel the difference if you have some experience and kind of know what you're looking for and you have a point of reference. You can notice the difference between 85% full versus 100% full. And honestly, when it's 100% full, it's maybe not the most pleasant because, again, longer wait for the restaurant, longer waits for everything. The gym is completely packed. The shows are packed. You have to get to the theater extra early to get a seat. The parties are going to be full anyways, but it's going to be full of party boys. So even if the ship is only 80% full, the parties will be full anyways. Don't worry about that. So it's actually not a bad thing if that doesn't sell out. And the other positive thing is, for those of you who are not able to commit to this cruise and have been eyeing it, I know this cruise is very popular. It has a reputation all its own. For the people that can't commit to this cruise but have been eyeing it, it's not a bad thing that it doesn't sell out, because maybe you are not able to commit to it until maybe like a month before or 2 months before. If it doesn't sell out, that means that there's still going to be rooms that you can book without having to like get a room transfer off of somewhere else or have to go on a wait list, for example. So I did a whole podcast about all the different aspects of this particular cruise over the summer, early summer, I believe, when it first went on sale. I remember doing an emergency podcast just for that, because I know a lot of you have your eyes on this cruise more than all the other cruises on the Atlantis calendar. So I was like, okay, once this cruise comes out, I'm going to do a special emergency podcast episode just for that. And that is up already. But I wanted to give everybody an update in terms of how well it's selling, because that obviously does change over time. And, you know, sometimes I do get people that are like, oh, the big party cruise, it's not going to be fun if it doesn't sell out. If it's not going to be fun if it's not full. And honestly, that's why I want to throw that part in. Even if it's only 80% sold out, it's still going to feel pretty full. It's not going to feel like it's not full, even if it's only 80% sold. All right. Finally, we move on to the LA Mexico cruise in April, which this one I'm actually kind of excited about. I talked about Atlantis having done a LA or a Southern California to Mexico cruise over Halloween in October in past many years. And they obviously are doing one from the East Coast later this month for this year from Mexico down the Caribbean. Obviously a very different itinerary, being on the East Coast and not the West Coast. But they are doing LA to Mexico in April, which they have not done before, to my recollection anyways. So, details. April 18th to the 26th is for 8 nights. All the ports are in Mexico. We have Ensenada, Cabo San Lucas, Puerto Vallarta, which I love, and Mazatlan. Those are the 4 ports. You're going to start and come back to Los Angeles in California. And this is also on the Brilliant Lady, again, which is a brand new ship. It just launched last month with Virgin, actually. So brand spanking new ship. Again, the mid-size ship is going to be really great for that. It's still early days right now, so there's not a ton of data or indicators yet in terms of like how well it's selling or not selling. Later on, as we get a little closer to April, I'm sure I'll come back in like December or January, and let everybody, I'll do another one of an update like this so people kind of know. It's selling, I think it's a little early to tell, but it's selling decent. And I think it's selling decent because this is a really lovely itinerary. I'm a little biased because I live in LA, but I really love the West Coast Mexico itinerary. Not because it's LA, because it's Mexico. It's a lot of great ports in Mexico. I love going to PV, and going on a cruise to go on a PV is a really great way to actually do it. Flights to PV are actually quite expensive, especially at key parts of the year. If you've never checked before, they can actually get pretty expensive. In some ways, it's almost cheaper and better to just take a cruise down there, just fly into Los Angeles. But this one, what's the vibe check going to be like? So what's this cruise going to be good for? I think this could be a really good cruise for new cruisers, especially those that are on the West Coast. You know, some of you don't want to have to fly all the way across the entire country to just take a cruise for the first time. I totally get it. I understand. I think this is going to be a really good cruise potentially for new cruisers, especially for those on the West Coast. I think is a very good itinerary For new cruisers as well, like the ports in Mexico, they're really reliable ports. PV is great to visit. It's a little bit of like, if you haven't been to PV before as a gay, I think you really should try to go and just visit at least once. And this is a great way to do it. But it's also at the same time, if you don't get off the ship, it won't be a problem. It's not like the ports are so fabulous that like if you don't get off, you would be like committing some sort of crime. It's a really good time of year. I think the weather will be really good. I think it's a really good ship. Again, I think all the Virgin ships and also that mid-sized type of a ship, like 25 to 3,000 passengers in that category is a really manageable size for a cruise, especially for new cruisers. And, they haven't ran a West Coast cruise out of in April before, but they've done it tons of times for, like I've said, in previous Halloween cruises. And the West Coast cruises in previous years have always just been so great. I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb and say this is probably the one cruise I recommend the most of all the cruises I've talked about so far. For new cruisers that want to try out what the Atlantic experience is like, I think it'll be really, really well-rounded. I'm hoping and thinking it's going to be a good mix between partying and relaxing, and also having a really great itinerary. So especially for those people that are on the West Coast, obviously, it's a little less travel time. So maybe I'm a bit biased because I live here, and also maybe I'm a bit biased because I've had so many great memories sailing this particular itinerary. But I think this is, out of all the cruises I've talked about, I'm actually booked in the February one. You on the February one, I will see some of you on board. But I'm actually very tempted to go on this April one that goes down to Mexico. It's only 2 months after the party cruise in February, but like, I really love this itinerary. I want to go on to another Virgin ship again. I think there's going to be like a really great fun cruise to go on. So I'm like seriously considering just booking myself a little second vacation next year, even though it's only 2 months after the big party cruise that I'm already booked on. Yeah, so this one, I'm looking forward to it. All right, that is a little update, quick overview of all of the Atlantis cruises coming up. Again, bar the Tahiti one, which over New Year's, that has been long ago sold out. The other thing I just want to mention a quick plug is if you are thinking about booking any of these cruises or you have booked some of these cruises, make sure you book your port hotel at the same time or just as soon as you can as well, because I always advise all of you, don't try to fly in to catch the cruise the morning of the cruise. It could very potentially end in heartbreak. Some of you might have heard about all the issues with air traffic control and flight delays, and a lot of these cruises are like over the winter. Like we have the October cruise, that's kind of like the start of winter in some places. Obviously, in November and January and February, winter can really put a wrench into air travel plans. So if your flight is delayed for whatever reason and you get to the port late, the ship is not going to wait for you. So I always recommend, I've done this for years now, recommend you fly into the port city at least the day before. And it's also great to like extend your vacation as well. Now, with Just Joey Travels, I can not only help you book a cruise and also answer any questions you have about a cruise you're looking at, but also help you book a port hotel as well. So on my website, JustJoeyTravels.com, I have on there some sample recommendations of some hotels and some neighborhoods in the different port cities that you might want to take a look at if you're unfamiliar with those areas. Or you can always just hit me up, JustJoeyTravels.com or the Just Joey Travels Instagram page. Reach me however you want to reach me, and then I will not only find the perfect cruise for you, but I'll also find the perfect port hotel for you as well. And with that final plug for Just Joey Travels, I will see you all next time. Bye, y'all.